The Cut and Run podcast is a really interesting conversation on the Kalenjin, a group in Kenya home to an incredible number of very strong long-distance runners. After listening to the podcast, I made many connections between this case and anthropology. This case would be a great study for ethnological, physical, and social anthropologists. To start, this is the study of a certain culture or ethnic group and sets out to discover how the culture of the Kalenjin people influence an aspect of their life. This falls directly under the term of ethnology. When discussing the several possible factors as to why the Kalenjin have the running abilities that they do, their physical body composition was brought up. The Kalenjin are nilotic, meaning that they have ancestry at notably low latitudes. They live in a very hot and dry climate, and so they evolved a body type that allowed for maximum cooling. This is why the Kalenjin have very long and thin limbs, to make for more surface area for heat to dissipate from. The Kalenjin's limbs, which get thinner as they move away from their center of gravity, allow for faster and easier movement. A physical anthropologist would find value in studying how the physical composition of the human body affects their movement and its speed. Viewing this from a social lens, there are factors from Kalenjin culture that could also be contributing to this. For instance, there are circumcision ceremonies, which force youth to undergo immense amounts of pain, may have built up the Kalenjin pain tolerance over time, making it easy for them to run longer distances in shorter time periods. Overall, this case study fits well for an anthropologist as it questions a trait or a characteristic of a certain group of people, and the answer of this could be attributed to a few possible reasons. There are, however, a few ethical dilemmas that could potentially be involved in this case study. It is always important to keep ethics in mind when conducting research to ensure that all findings are accurate and respectful. I think one of the most significant ethical considerations involved in this case is objectivity. Since this case is set out to answer a question whose answer is not exactly known, there could be tons of room for interpretation and, in turn, error. I feel like this could be a bit iffy because of the biases that certain types of anthropologists would bring to the table, some without even realizing it. For example, a physical anthropologist's views on this case could differ drastically from those of a social anthropologist. This proves that collaboration across the entire field of anthropology is needed when viewing, studying, and analyzing cases such as this one. In addition, since this case delves specifically into a nation's culture, it's important to be mindful and respectful when choosing terms and such. This leads me to my next point. The term ethnocentric refers to viewing another culture through the lens of your own, and making comparisons and assumptions on it based on what is considered to be the norm in your own culture. In the context of this specific case, ethnocentrism is almost inevitable, as long as the researcher is not Kalenjin themselves. I also think that just in general, anthropologists need to keep in mind that their personal experiences and cultures will undoubtedly form a barrier of bias between them and any case involving cultures other than their own. With this case in particular, what may seem to be normal or accepted in Kalenjin culture may be considered bizarre in another, and vice versa. When communicating results to others, anthropologists may have a slightly biased or tainted narrative, but this isn't always avoidable, neither is it necessarily their fault. Human perception is not universal, and having only one perspective on any case is not beneficial. This is why I think anthropologists and all other social scientists should conduct research in groups, where multiple cultures, backgrounds, experiences are present. This way, a much more accurate recount of a case findings can be formed and communicated. The Cut and Run podcast about Kenyan runners was really interesting to me, and while listening to it, I came up with a few questions that I have, each from different fields of anthropology. For cultural anthropology, I wonder if an athletic child with Kalenjin parents who's brought up in a different culture would have the same running capabilities as they would had they been raised in the Kalenjin community. I also wonder if an athletic child of a different racial background would benefit athletically from growing up among the Kalenjin, or if it would make no difference. For forensic anthropology, I'm curious as to whether there are clues in human remains from this part of the world which show anthropologists that the running capabilities trace back into the far past. I think this would help answer the curiosity of what the main cause of the running abilities come from. For physical anthropology, I wonder if parts of the world with similar physical conditions, such as climate, are home to people with similar typical body structures, and whether or not this influences their running abilities as well. While formulating these questions, I came to realize that they all embody ethnology, which is the study of people and cultures from around the world. Thank you for listening to my exploration stemming from the Cut and Run podcast. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already, as I think that it could be of benefit and interest to everyone.